Some time back I made a video about the protagonists and you guys got your pitchforks out. Now it's time to reach for those pitchforks again because this time we're going to be ranking the strategists. I'm only going to be talking about the main and most notable strategists from the mainline games in this list, the Silverbergs, Apple, Shu, Lucretia and Klaus. I was going to include the strategist apprentices like Agnes and Lele in the rankings too, but frankly they never done enough of note to warrant a place in the list and there's not enough to say about them. As for the spin-offs, Liu Shen from Tierkreis was more of an advisor, and can anybody honestly tell me a single strategy or thing of note that Regius done in Woven Web of the Centuries without googling it? Because I sure can't. Anyway, let's jump right in. Number 10, Apple. It comes as no surprise that Apple sits at the bottom of the list. Apple as a strategist is borderline incompetent. As a former student of Matthew Silverberg, she has a decent grasp on the basics and the concept of military strategy, but she lacks the vision to implement those ideas. She inherited Matthew's heart, but not his brain, and she's not up to the task. She done nothing in Suikoden 1 except continue to study under Matthew, but in Suikoden 2 she played a much larger part and took the role of strategist in the early game. I think Apple's problem as a strategist is she doesn't see the long term or the bigger picture. She sees only the moment in the now and what's right in front of her. She tunnel visions and makes no contingency plans to anticipate the enemy doing anything other than what her eyes see before her. Then when it goes wrong, her confidence is shattered. By the time of Suikoden 3, she stepped entirely out of the strategist game and was travelling with Caesar to follow the trail of Matthew's journey to write a biography on him. Apple is not a strategist. She's the heart and the conscience of the strategist she works alongside. Number 9, Caesar Silverberg. Perhaps some people will be shocked to see a Silverberg rank so low on the list, but what are his actual strategies, contributions or accomplishments? Caesar is the youngest grandson of Leon Silverberg. He's said to have a natural talent for strategy and occasionally has spurts of brilliance, but his laziness and laid-back attitude doesn't allow him to achieve his true potential. Caesar provided little strategy that I can remember in Suikoden 3, with his go-to plan usually being, we don't need a plan for this battle, just attack, or just repel their attack. He did show glimpses of his brilliance in Chisha village, where he prevented Lebuk and their Mantors from participating in the battle by burning a mixture of ingredients that repulsed the Mantors. Truthfully, if it wasn't for his brother Albert playing both sides and secretly feeding them information, Caesar's plans never would have worked. To be fair, he was only 17 in Suikoden 3, actually 16 because Suikoden 1, 2 and 3 used that antiquated Asian aging system where you're considered one at birth, so there's still plenty of time for Caesar to achieve his true potential. And given the fact that he realised the gap between himself and his older brother Albert was greater than he realised, he has his newfound motivation to spur him on. Ultimately though, he has to be in 9th for me because while he may have potential and may have finally found his motivation, we're not ranking potential. Maybe we'll see him again in a future entry where he's finally achieved his potential. Number 8, Eleanor Silverberg. Another Silverberg ranked lowly, which again may take people by surprise. All we know of her past was that she used to serve the Scarlet Moon Empire and that Graham Cray was her subordinate, but no details of her history with them were provided. Eleanor, just like many other characters in Suikoden 4, is a victim of having very little to nothing to do because of how short and rushed the story is and how empty the map is. Go here and ask the people of this island for help. Okay, cool, is that not common sense? Were we not planning to do that in the first place? Sure, she was a bit ruthless and showed no hesitation in making Laszlo use the Rune of Punishment to destroy Kuluk's flaming ships. But it wasn't until the final battle where we saw her shine by sending a letter to the Scarlet Moon Empire to trick them into invading Kuluk to distract their armies for the invasion of Eliel. Which was a pretty cool moment. It was very reminiscent of Matthew tricking the City-States army into attacking the Senon region in Suikoden 1, and then she used the captured Kuluk ships as a distraction in the fog for the giant rune cannon on Eliel. It's tough to rank her. She's obviously a very talented strategist, and given her age, she definitely served the Scarlet Moon Empire against Kuluk in many battles in the past, but we see too little of her actual ability and we know nothing about the details of her past. Number 7, Salome Harris. I think Salome is often overlooked in the conversation about Suikoden strategists. Salome was mentored by Johanna, a famed tactician in Zexen who wrote his own book on military strategy known as the War Chronicle. Now I will admit, an argument can be made against Salome that he was primarily dealing with the grassland tribes who aren't exactly known for their creative tactics in battle. but he has shown himself to be quite talented with political affairs too. He kept contacts in other nations and traded information. He discovered some members of the Zexen Council were selling out to Harmonia and worked to have them removed. He secretly communicated with Gedo to protect Budok Castle. He had the foresight to see they needed to end the senseless bloodshed between Zexen and the Grassland tribes and band together to resist Harmonia. He does leave a letter in the comment box saying he thinks Caesar has twice the power he does, and I think that would be true if only Caesar would apply himself fully. I think Salome is underrated and often overlooked as a strategist. Number 6. Klaus Windermere. During the events of Suikoden 2, Klaus proved that he's extremely talented and isn't to be underestimated despite his young age and inexperience. His uncle gave him a book titled Heroes of Harmonia, where he learned about the blind strategist Solette and recognized the pivotal role of strategists in battle. His parents enlisted him at Solette's academy in Crystal Valley in Harmonia, and then he became the tactician for the 3rd Highland Royal Army. We first see him at Two River, where his strategy divided the city's races against one another, but his plan was thwarted by Ryu reuniting them and Fitcher sending a letter to Shu for reinforcements. It was a solid plan, and when it didn't work, he and his father remained calm and collected and withdrew their men with minimal losses. Then he partially saw through Shu's plan to lure Kiba in and ambush them. His plan almost worked, but he was defeated by Shu's plan as he didn't see through the ruse of the Cobalt forces retreating and then ambushing their rear. He also helped minimize the losses of the Tinto forces when Jess ordered them to recklessly engage Necklord's zombie army. After the game, he took over Shu's position and continued to consult and learn from him. 12 years later, he helped defend against the Harmonian army for 6 months during the High East Rebellion, though he did enlist the aid of Shu. Klaus is an extremely talented strategist and one that's not to be underestimated. He can predict the enemy's strategies and his demeanor remains calm and composed no matter the situation. I hope we see him again in a future entry. Number 5. Albert Silverberg. Albert is a very calm and calculating strategist who takes very much after his grandfather with a rather unique goal of unifying the world into a single nation. While studying abroad in Harmonia, he came to believe more strongly in his grandfather's practical strategies of ending wars as fast as possible no matter what the cost. He established himself in Harmonia and quickly rose through the ranks while manipulating Luke, Harmonia, Zexen and the Grasslands into going to war. He's very calculating and he has the perfect poker face. He'll manipulate and use whoever and whatever he needs to. He has no qualms about backstabbing and betraying those he works with to achieve his goals, and he's secretly working with another nation. Even though his appearances in Suikoden 3 were short, he has shown himself to be every bit as talented as the best of the Silverbergs, and given his young age, he'll be one to keep an eye on in the future. Number 4. Matthew Silverberg. Matthew being placed in 4th is probably going to come as a shock to many of you who probably rank him as either number 1 or number 2. Matthew is, in my opinion, the most interesting of all the strategists. He's a man plagued by the moral weight of his actions. He's haunted by the ghosts of those who died from his strategies, and it makes him feel the most human. He served under Qasim Hazil during the War of Succession and helped turn a small band of ragtag rebels into an army large enough to overthrow the Scarlet Moon Empire. So why haven't I ranked Matthew 1st or 2nd like I'm certain many people will? Look at the circumstances of the wars he fought and of his past. It wasn't until he brought in his uncle Leon Silverberg that they started winning the War of Succession. It was Leon who acted as the chief strategist, and it was Leon's strategies that won them the war, not Matthew's. As for the Gate Rune War, Matthew and the Liberation Army benefited greatly from the incompetence and corruption plaguing the Empire thanks to Windy. The cowardly Krays and Kanan promoted to the commanders of the Imperial Guard. No more needs to be said about that. Small rebel factions and uprisings were breaking out all over the country. These uprisings tied up Milik and Qasim's forces and forced them to clamp down in their own regions. These uprisings also tied up much of the Empire's rural forces, and Lake Torin was plagued by pirates tying up Sonya's navy. Under the spell of the Conqueror rune, Kwanda wasn't acting in the benefit of the Empire and drove the kobolds, dwarves and survivors of the elves into the lap of the Liberation Army, boosting their numbers. Necklord killed the Imperial forces stationed in the Lormar region and turned them into zombies, which ultimately led the Warriors Village and other surrounding villages of the Lormar region into joining the Liberation Army. Windy poisoned the dragons and drove the Dragon Knights into an alliance with the Liberation Army. How would Matthew have fared without those circumstances? What would he have done if Sonya had simply blockaded Torin Castle and starved them to death? How would he have defeated Kwanda if he wasn't under the control of the Conqueror rune and oppressing the non-human races? Matthew helped overthrow an empire. Even though that empire was rotting from within, they still had the odds stacked against him, and they even had a traitor in their midst. But thanks to Windy's incompetence, they sure as hell had a lot going for them too. One thing I'll give Matthew credit for is he always listened to other suggestions, and he took their suggestions to heart, while every other strategist tells you what to do at all times. After being stabbed by Sanchez and with his health rapidly deteriorating, he pushed himself through the final battle, saying he needed to see Odessa's hopes realized. But I don't think Matthew was telling the truth. He had Leon, who by all accounts is more talented than him. He could have sat the final battle out, but he didn't, because deep down I believe Matthew wanted to die. The guilt of his actions caught up to him, and I don't think he could take it anymore. I love Matthew as a character. He's the most human of all the strategists, but I don't think he's the best strategist. Number 3. Shu. Probably the most shocking entry in the list, as I'm certain the vast majority of you rank him as number 1, but if you actually analyse the game and the battles, I don't think he is. A prodigy? Yes. One of the greatest strategists in the Suikoden world? Yes. But the best? No, I don't think he is. Shu is by no means perfect. He's a dick when you meet him, but he grows as a person throughout the game. He makes mistakes, he takes risks, he admits his limits, and despite his talents, he knows he's inferior to his foe. Shu, by his own admission, was inferior to Leon, and Shu benefited greatly from Leon pulling him out of a jam with Luca. Luca had all but defeated Shu's plots, and if it wasn't for Leon, that game was over. Shu and the New Alliance army also benefited greatly from Joey's lack of resolve and his reluctance to follow through with Leon's strategies. Still, Shu has countless times shown his brilliance. He outsmarted Solanji by using the lake to flank him. He outsmarted Kiba and Klaus by feigning division in their ranks and ambushing them. He outsmarted Hyland by faking reinforcements in Matilda and by risking his own life to burn them to death in the forest. Shu is an incredible character and an incredible strategist, but I believe there are 2 strategists that are better than him. Number 2, Lucretia Merces. I'm torn on Lucretia. Part of me wanted to rank her in first, part of me wanted to drop her down to 4th, even though arguably she's probably number 1. Lucretia is a Karayan who was orphaned when the Flame Champion lost control of the True Fire Rune. She then travelled to Harmonia to study military strategy and eventually ended up in the employ of the Godwins. Felena had just gotten over a bloody succession conflict and were in a weakened state when the New Arma's kingdom attacked. No details are known, but Lucretia's strategies are said to have led the weakened Felena to a swift and decisive victory. Based strictly on how the strategists are presented in the games and how effective their strategies are, Lucretia is probably one of the best strategists in the entire Suikoden world. And as much as I love her character, I also dislike her character because she's too perfect, almost to a fault, if that makes sense. She's the queen of plot convenience. Like the plot was written around her strategies, which almost makes her boring and uninteresting despite her brilliance. And at the same time, her story and character are compelling because of how much tension she creates from playing and manipulating people like no one else can. It's almost contradictory what I'm saying. She's always 2 steps ahead of everyone. She either already knows everything or has strong suspicions about something and her suspicions are correct, and she knows the exact people needed to assist you at the right moments. She never got humbled. She never had to pivot or deviate from her plans. You never felt threatened or on the back foot. You never felt like she pulled you out of a jam or pulled off a miraculous strategy because she always knew exactly what to do at all times in the most perfect and flawless way without fail. And the annoying part about feeling that way is that she did pull you out of several jams, and she did employ many great strategies like the defend in depth strategy and making the Godwin and Arma's forces overextend and luring them into Ceres Lake and drowning them, or how she used the Godwin's own tactics against them in Dorat by starting small fires and turning the civilian populace against them. We can potentially chalk a lot of her brilliance off due to her familiarity with how the Godwins think due to having previously been their strategist, or from the Godwins not having a new strategist of their own for her to compete against. As much as I love Lucretia's character and her design, I also hate how they wrote her to be infallible. Every other strategist in the series has pros and cons. They have flaws, they suffer setbacks and failures, but not Lucretia. And number 1, Leon Silverberg. In my opinion, he is the best strategist in the series and the best strategist in the Suikoden world. He's ruthless, he's cold, he's calculating, but at the same time he's rational and realistic. He wants to achieve victory at all costs as quickly as possible to minimize long-term suffering, even if that quick victory results in untold casualties and short-term suffering. He became the lead strategist for Barbarossa during the War of Succession. He turned the whole war around and won the war for Barbarossa. He devised a cold, heartless but ingenious strategy to rally the Scarlet Moon Empire against the city-states after they invaded. The people of the Scarlet Moon Empire were tired of war and had lost the will to continue to fight, all but resigning to allowing the city-states to keep what they gained. But Leon staged the massacre of the people of Calica and blamed the city-states to rally the Empire against them for another war. Fast forward to Suikoden 2. I know Leon isn't introduced until later, but surely he was working alongside Joey as early as capturing Greenhill. There's no way Joey came up with the strategy of flooding the city with refugees to cause internal strife and to starve them into surrendering by himself. That strategy is cruel, and it's got Leon written all over it. Leon comes up with a plan to have Aguirre's Blight killed and then betrays Luca to the New Alliance army. His plan to force Ryu and Teresa into a peace conference to surrender was perfect. The people of the city-states were tired of war, and Highland sent Colgan to make a big public show of wanting peace, so if Ryo declined and didn't attend, problems would arise. Ryo and Teresa show up in Muse, and it's a trap to force them to surrender. This trap would have worked, but Joey lacked the resolve to follow through in hurting his friend or spilling blood in front of Palika. Leon's plan was perfect. Had Ryo and Teresa died there, the New Alliance army would have crumbled with no credible leader to replace them, and Highland would have won the war. It's hard for the player to really appreciate Leon's brilliance and intelligence, as he played basically no role in Suikoden 1 and all of his backstory happened before the game and was told in books. And pretty much every failure Leon had against the New Alliance army in Suikoden 2 comes back to Joey lacking the resolve and the stomach to follow through with the plan. And by Shu's own admission, Leon is a better strategist than him, which is why he risked his own life and was ready to burn to death in his desperate attempt to kill Leon, because he knew he could never beat him on the battlefield. Shu spent the entire game trying to avoid Leon. I'm sure there's some divisive and controversial picks on the list, but let me know your thoughts below. How would you rank the strategists from worst to best? Who would you rank as the best strategist in the series and why? In the next video, I think I'll rank the antagonists. Spoiler alert, it's Luca Blight, right? Well, maybe not. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.